Please rewind this cassette.
Well, that was more like it. This had to be the best episode of Season 2 so far. After a couple of slow and disappointing episodes that I wasn't a very big fan of, Episode 6 did a great job of giving the show a new focus that it helped me stop comparing it so much to the previous season. There was a few good ideas here. The main one is having the majority of the action take place in one location, this hospital or insane asylum, whatever it was. This reminded me of a George Romero movie. I also really like the use of flashbacks. They went all lost season 1 with this, something the show hasn't leaned on as much in previous episodes. I think we've had glimpses of flashbacks, but never a whole episode dedicated to it like this. We got some backstory on the boys before they brought in Huey, which I wish they had done more of. We'd only heard this stuff in dialogue before. And we got the backstory of the character Lamplighter, who had only been mentioned and then seen very briefly in a previous episode. And he's played by Shawn Ashmore, who's, Bobby, Iceman from the X-Men movies, who's ironically playing a take on the character of Pyro, who was his friend who turned into a villain in those movies. This gave the Bloody Doors off a sense of something different, I suppose. That it had a dramatic momentum that the other character-focused episodes were lacking. Also, the MVP of this episode goes to Frenchie, who has felt like pointless up until this episode. I honestly was saying that I wish they would kill Frenchie off, but now I'm reminded why I love him so much in the first place, because he's this great character, and the actor who plays him is absolutely terrific. The boys actually go on a mission in this episode with hilarity and surprises, stuff that I'd been wanting to see. There's a guy who can extend his large penis and stretch it out like Mr. Fantastic, and he uses it at one point to attack Mother's milk. And then a guy who, shoots acid out at people, but then the acid comes back on him and burns his face off. This is the craziest shit we've seen since Gecko was letting people cut off his body parts for money, and it's just this kind of stuff that I think the show's been lacking recently, and it was nice to see. It's just messed up stuff that gives the show the edge that makes it stand out a little bit more, and these things were clever. It also helps with the world building to make this universe feel bigger with all these small scale things like this. Oh, and there's a Tetsuo from Akira is in this episode. This isn't subtle at all. It's Tetsuo. They have the hospital scene. I think it's a girl, but she has Tetsuo's powers from Akira, or you could say 11, but obviously it's Tetsuo. I also really dug the dynamic between Butcher and Starlight, who began to realize they have more in common than both initially realized. I have to say, though, Huey still feels pretty pointless. He's just there to get hurt this episode, and then nothing really comes of it by the end of the episode. Another example of Season 2 using plot armor. I know Huey's the main character, but what, he's just going to get hurt and be okay in a couple episodes? It wasn't that long ago that he almost got killed by Homelander in the tunnel. And now he's got something in his stomach, and it's okay, just kill this guy off. These fake outs are getting ridiculous. I'm cool with Frenchie again, but seriously. And honestly, I just don't really give a shit about Queen Maeve's storyline, at all. She's easily become the least interesting character on the show. Luckily, the show has shifted some of its focus back onto the boys, and not made everything about the politics of the Seven and Vought and Compound V. Beyond that, we have reshifted everything on the original premise of the show. It's no longer really about the boys attempting to kill the Supes for revenge, or Butcher versus Homelander. The final twist in this episode reveals they're going up against an army of superhuman Nazis to be led by Homelander with his blonde eyes and blue hair. This is bonkers stuff, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to read into this, in particular SJWs, and say that this is a commentary on our current conversation on systemic racism or white supremacy in the Trump era. But I didn't see all that. To me, this is just going along with the comic book storyline and is the natural over-the-top escalation that will lead us into Season 3. I mean, this is just the crazy shit they do in this show. I don't think it's a reflection of the times we live in. I think that they could have done this years ago, because this stuff's in the comic, and it would have been the same thing. I don't think that they were planning this to be this way. Although maybe, who knows. But I didn't feel like it came across that way. The only way the show can avoid repeating itself is to change what's at stake, which has been the issue with Season 2. It's mostly failed to do this. It's feeling like a shell of its former self. But I'm so happy to be interested in new stuff. You know, like there's new things to be interested in now. If there was a theme throughout this episode, it was that of truth. This begins with the conversation between the Deep and A-Train at the lunch with the leader of the Church of the Collective, which I think is that guy from ER. He tells them to have a truth exchange, which is very Scientology-esque. A-Train gets up to leave before it's revealed to him that the church knows more about his situation with the Seven than he does. How the church is tied with Vought has yet to be revealed and where this is all going to go, but it's interesting. Then we have Maeve's girlfriend discovering the truth about the plane crash from Season 1, even though I don't really know why she'd be upset about this, because what would she expect Queen Maeve to do? She can't fight Homelander. He was going to laser everybody. And even in the video, you could see she's begging for him to save these two girls, and he just tells her no. So I don't really know what Queen Maeve did wrong there. It's kind of an issue with that character. She's such a altruistic, good person that she's just become bland and boring. Then in the best use of this, both Frenchie and Lamplighter reveal things about themselves that changes how the other characters have seen them up until this point. Both of them feeling regret for their past sins, and that they want to be punished for it is a really interesting thing, in particular with Frenchie, that he's not looking for forgiveness. This all builds up to an emotional climax where Homelander, who actually seems smart again, is becoming sick of being lied to by everyone he's ever cared about, and he confronts Stormfront at the end of the episode because she's like, oh, I'm going to a meeting, but she was really going to the hospital where Vought's keeping these people they're experimenting on and putting Compound V in them that are adults, because you know it takes better with babies, so they haven't really been able to figure out a way for it to work with grown-ups without them having terrible side effects and stuff like that. And it was just nice that Homelander actually felt menacing again, and that he was sharp, and that, you know, him burning his trailer down with the flowers in it, that's the Homelander I want, you know? But then she actually tells him the truth. She tells him that, hey, I'm a Nazi. I've been around since 1920. I was married to Vought. I loved him. Everyone I've ever loved is dead, but I love you with all my heart. And in telling him the truth, the first person to really tell him the truth like this, Homelander accepts her and for the first time doesn't feel alone anymore. And they embrace in a kiss that solidifies them as the evil power couple that the boys will have to overcome in order to save the world. Which was just really nice. And it was the first time that Stormfront felt vulnerable and raw, and not either this Portland, you know, modern tech bitch, or this evil racist. This was the first time she really felt human, and the actress did a great job. And they handled this plot reveal really well. And I just absolutely, I just love that scene. The way she tells him everything, and it just seems crazy. It wouldn't work if it wasn't handled right or acted well, because it's pretty silly, all things considered. It's actually pretty goofy. But it felt like the boys, you know, being that goofy. And I wasn't 100% sold on the romance between them. I wasn't 100% sold on, you know, there's a scene early on in this episode that's really good where she's just like rubbing his dick and they kill a guy in an alleyway. But then it was like, oh, okay, it feels like he's gonna turn on her in this episode. But no, this actually, and it's that truth theme, you know, that it starts with the conversation, then everybody's revealing things throughout this episode. And having that theme run throughout the episode made this a more intelligent and just rich piece of writing than that's happened in the last few episodes. The last few episodes, there were themes and things going on, but this was very tight, and that was really important. As soon as I saw the scene with Frenchie talking about the Golden Girls. I knew they would use that at the end of the episode. They would play the song "Thank You for Being a Friend," which was fantastic. And we got a tease of the future with Tetsuo getting picked up on the side of the road hitchhiking. Where does this all end up? We have to wait and see on that. But that's my favorite song they've used since they've used "Pressure" in the first episode of the season. Overall, this episode was elevated by great writing and acting from the main cast. Sure, the tension wasn't there like in the best moments of previous episodes in the show that are really good, but this was the first time the boys felt like it had found some comfortable balance in being a TV show. I was no longer clinging on to it being a cinematic experience like at its best in the first season. This was a good episode of television, and I'm fine with that because I was entertained for the entire hour, and I'm happy to be enjoying the show again. Keeping Mother's Milk, Kamika, and Frenchie stuck in that hospital with Lamplighter, a character that they hated before, and them all getting trapped in this situation that was sort of like a cabin in the woods, let all the monsters out. And Stormfront coming was tense, and then Butcher and Starlight having to try and save Huey, and then Stormfront and Homelander having to come to this place at the end. All of these things were good. This was all really well done, and it was the best idea so far this season, besides maybe the carryover of the super terrorists from the first season, but I don't really think that's gone anywhere. This is much more interesting, and I also don't know why it took so long to get to this point. Why wasn't this the plot line, the main storyline for season 2? Why didn't we spend more of the other episodes on Lamplighter and this hospital with these super people? And why didn't we spend more time with, that's just confusing to me why that wasn't more of the focus of season 2, because we're getting later in the season and all of this seems to be happening now when this should have been. Why did we spend so much time at Butcher's aunt's house with Huey and Mother's Milk? You know what I mean? Why did we waste time there when we could have had this storyline happening? Because the storyline is superior to the other things that have been going on in episodes that now feel not pointless, but they didn't need to be there. The preview for episode 7 is very promising, as Homelander is bringing Stormfront to meet Becca and Ryan. And I don't know where this is going to go, because there's that scene in the trailer where Homelander has the blood on his face and he's looking very distraught. So someone's going to get hurt or something. I don't know if it's going to be Stormfront or it's going to be Ryan. I'm not really sure where they're going with this. I don't know if they would kill Ryan off. That would be crazy. But everything seems to be coming together for an exciting finish. But if only it hadn't taken so long to get there.